Triceratops herd abandons a wounded baby. Then Velociraptors step in. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The morning sun cast golden rays over the lush plains, where a herd of Triceratops meandered in relative tranquility. These towering herbivores moved as a cohesive unit, their immense horns glinting under the sunlight and their frills a spectacle of earthy tones. At the center of the herd, protected by layers of adults, walked a playful juvenile. Its shorter horns and smaller frame stood out, its curious nature evident as it occasionally stopped to inspect the foliage beneath its feet. This herd, like all Triceratops, thrived on unity. Together, they were a formidable force, capable of fending off predators with their combined strength and sheer size. Even the cunning packs of velociraptors that prowled the shadows of the jungle kept their distance from the armored giants. But in nature, danger never announces itself. The first sign of trouble came as a low rumble that vibrated the earth. The juvenile froze, its small frame tensing, while the adults paused in unison, their sharp senses attuned to the unfamiliar disturbance. A rustling from the tall grasses to the east snapped the herd into high alert. The dominant female, the matriarch, raised her massive head, her nostrils flaring as she sniffed the air. And then it happened. Like a shadow erupting from the underbrush, a predator lunged. A Tyrannosaurus rex, its massive jaws open wide. Its roar pierced the tranquility, a deafening reminder of its dominance in the prehistoric food chain. The Triceratops herd scattered in controlled chaos, their survival instincts overriding everything else. Adults formed a defensive semicircle, their horns lowered and ready for battle. But in the chaos, the juvenile found itself exposed. It stumbled, its shorter legs unable to keep pace with the panicked adults. The matriarch bellowed, her call one of urgency, as she signaled for the herd to keep moving. The rex charged forward, its thunderous steps shaking the ground, its beady eyes locking onto the vulnerable youngling. The juvenile screamed, its cry a heart-wrenching mixture of fear and confusion. It bolted, veering sharply to avoid the predator's snapping jaws, but it wasn't fast enough. The rex lunged again, its razor-sharp teeth grazing the juvenile's hind leg. Blood sprayed onto the grass, and the young Triceratops fell, its wounded leg rendering it immobile. The matriarch turned briefly, her eyes meeting the juvenile's. For a split second, it seemed as though she might charge toward the rex in a desperate attempt to protect her own. But instinct ruled over emotion. The herd's survival depended on its numbers. With a sorrowful bellow, the matriarch led the herd away, leaving the wounded baby behind. The rex, satisfied with its easy prey, slowed its pace. It circled the injured juvenile, its nostrils flaring as it inhaled the scent of fresh blood. The baby Triceratops cried out, its small horns useless against such a colossal foe. But just as the rex prepared to deliver the killing blow, a sharp, high-pitched screech echoed through the plains. From the tall grass emerged a pack of velociraptors, their sleek, feathered forms moving with predatory grace. The pack was led by a particularly cunning female, her piercing yellow eyes scanning the scene. Though dwarfed by the rex, the raptors were notorious for their intelligence and coordinated attacks. They didn't hunt for sport, they hunted for survival. The rex snarled, annoyed by the interruption. It roared at the raptors, a clear warning to stay away, but the pack didn't retreat. Instead, they fanned out, their movements synchronized as they began to circle the rex. The lead raptor barked orders to her pack, their shrill cries forming an unspoken language. The rex, recognizing the threat, turned its massive body to face the nearest raptor. But this was exactly what the pack wanted. While the rex was distracted, two raptors darted toward the juvenile, their movements quick and precise. They sniffed the injured Triceratops, their heads tilting in curiosity. The juvenile flinched, expecting the worst. But instead of attacking, the raptors did something entirely unexpected. They began to nudge the juvenile gently with their snouts, as if assessing its condition. The lead raptor barked again, and the two scouts backed away, returning to the circle that had formed around the Rex. The standoff between the Rex and the raptors continued, neither side willing to concede. But the Rex, despite its size and power, was alone. The raptors had numbers, and more importantly, they had strategy. They lunged and retreated in quick bursts, testing the Rex's defenses, forcing it to expend energy. Slowly but surely, they began to drive the massive predator away from the injured Triceratops. After what felt like an eternity, the Rex let out a frustrated roar and turned back toward the jungle. It wasn't worth the effort. The raptors watched it go, their sharp eyes ensuring it didn't double back. When the Rex's footsteps faded into the distance, the pack turned their attention to the juvenile. The lead raptor approached cautiously, her movements calculated. The baby Triceratops trembled, its instincts screaming that these creatures were predators. But to its surprise, the raptor didn't attack. Instead, she chirped softly, a sound that almost resembled reassurance. She inspected the wound on the juvenile's leg, her sharp claws surprisingly gentle as she cleared debris from the injury. The pack moved closer, forming a protective circle around the young Triceratops. The lead raptor let out a low growl, and the others responded in kind, their unity evident. It was as though they had made a collective decision. The juvenile, abandoned by its own kind, would now fall under their protection. The wounded juvenile tried to rise but winced in pain, its injured leg unable to bear weight. The lead raptor chirped again, her tone firm but not aggressive. She nudged the juvenile, encouraging it to stand. With great effort, the baby Triceratops managed to get onto 3 legs, its injured limb held awkwardly off the ground. The pack began to move, and the lead raptor stayed close to the juvenile, guiding it. They didn't head toward the jungle, where the Rex had disappeared. Instead, they moved toward a dense thicket on the edge of the plains, a place where the pack often retreated to rest and plan their hunts. It was a risky decision. By bringing the injured herbivore into their territory, the raptors were expending resources they could scarcely afford. But the lead raptor seemed resolute, her actions driven by something beyond pure survival. The journey to the thicket was slow and arduous. The juvenile stumbled frequently, its injured leg dragging behind it. Each time it fell, the raptors stopped, their sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. One of the younger raptors, less disciplined than the others, chirped impatiently, but a sharp glare from the leader silenced him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in hues of orange and pink, the pack finally reached the thicket. The lead raptor let out a series of short, high-pitched cries, signaling to the others to stand guard. She then turned her attention back to the juvenile, who collapsed onto the soft ground, exhausted. The pack worked quickly and efficiently. One raptor returned with a mouthful of herbs, which the lead raptor applied to the juvenile's wound. The baby flinched but didn't resist, too tired to protest. Another raptor brought water in a large leaf, holding it carefully as the juvenile drank. It was an extraordinary sight, a pack of predators caring for a member of a species they would normally hunt. The bond forming between the raptors and the baby Triceratops was fragile but undeniable. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the juvenile let out a soft, grateful chirp, its fear giving way to trust. The lead raptor settled down beside the baby, her body forming a barrier against the cold night air. The rest of the pack spread out, their keen senses attuned to the sounds of the jungle. For now, they were safe. But in the unforgiving world of the Cretaceous, safety was always temporary. The jungle slowly stirred to life with the early whispers of dawn. As golden streaks of sunlight pierced through the thick canopy, the thicket housing the unlikely pair began to hum with activity. The Velociraptor pack moved with precision, each member resuming their duties. Some went to scout the area for potential threats, while others foraged for food. Their sleek bodies wove effortlessly through the underbrush, their sharp eyes scanning for danger. The injured juvenile Triceratops remained curled on the ground, its leg bandaged with the crude yet effective herbal paste the raptors had applied the previous night. It stirred lightly, its small frill twitching as it adjusted to the morning light. The lead raptor, ever vigilant, crouched nearby, her yellow eyes locked on the juvenile as if to reassure it that it was safe. The baby Triceratops looked around, its gaze darting between the raptors. Its instincts told it that these were creatures to be feared, yet their actions told a different story. The lead raptor chirped softly, a sound that had become familiar and strangely comforting. The juvenile responded with a hesitant chirp of its own, the beginnings of a bond forming between predator and prey. One of the younger raptors returned to the thicket, its jaws gripping a bundle of leaves and berries. It dropped the food near the juvenile, chirping excitedly as if to say, "Here, eat this." The baby sniffed the offering cautiously before taking a tentative bite. The berries were sweet and tangy, a much-needed boost of energy for the exhausted youngling. The lead raptor watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction. She knew the pack's decision to care for the juvenile was an unusual one, but she also understood the value of alliances, even in the brutal world of the Cretaceous. The baby was no threat to them now, and perhaps it could serve a purpose in the future. For now, it was simply a member of their makeshift family. As the morning wore on, the raptors continued their routine. Two members of the pack returned from scouting, their sharp cries signaling the presence of potential danger. The lead raptor perked up, her body tensing as she listened to their report. The scouts had detected the faint scent of the Rex in the distance. It wasn't close, but it was a reminder that the apex predator was still a looming threat. The pack immediately went into action, their movements a symphony of coordination. They reinforced the thicket, dragging large branches and leaves to create a more secure perimeter. The lead raptor assigned 2 guards to stay with the juvenile, their piercing eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. The baby Triceratops watched all of this with wide eyes, its young mind struggling to process the complex dynamics of the pack. It had grown up in a world where survival depended on sticking with its own kind, yet here it was, surrounded by creatures that should have been its enemies. And yet, it felt a strange sense of safety among them. As the day unfolded, the pack's attention shifted to teaching the juvenile how to move despite its injury. The lead raptor took on the role of a patient but firm teacher, nudging the baby to its feet and encouraging it to take small steps. The juvenile wobbled, its injured leg dragging slightly, but the raptor's persistent chirps kept it motivated. The other raptors watched from a distance, their expressions a mix of curiosity and amusement. One particularly bold raptor tried to join in, playfully nudging the baby with its snout. The juvenile let out a startled chirp, its horns flaring defensively, but the playful raptor backed off with a series of apologetic chirps. Over time, the juvenile grew more confident in its movements. It still limped, but it managed to follow the pack as they moved through the thicket. The raptors adjusted their pace to accommodate the baby, their unity a testament to their adaptability. By late afternoon, the pack decided to venture further from the thicket in search of food. The lead raptor made it clear that the juvenile would stay behind, guarded by 2 members of the pack. The baby protested with a series of plaintive chirps, but the lead raptor nudged it gently, her eyes conveying reassurance. The juvenile reluctantly settled back onto the soft ground, watching as the pack disappeared into the jungle. The 2 raptors left behind took their duties seriously, their keen senses attuned to every rustle and sound. The baby Triceratops, meanwhile, dozed lightly, its small body still recovering from the ordeal. The warm afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. But the tranquility didn't last long. A sudden, sharp cry from one of the raptors jolted the juvenile awake. The guards had detected movement in the underbrush, their bodies tense as they scanned the area. The baby let out a frightened chirp, its instincts telling it to run, but its injured leg rendered escape impossible. From the shadows emerged a lone Deinonychus, its feathers glinting in the sunlight. Smaller than a rex but no less dangerous, the Deinonychus was a swift and cunning predator. It hissed, its sharp teeth bared as it eyed the juvenile. The 2 raptors guarding the baby stepped forward, their claws flexing as they prepared to defend their charge. The Deinonychus lunged, but the raptors were ready. One of them darted to the side, drawing the predator's attention, while the other positioned itself between the Deinonychus and the juvenile. The battle was fierce, the air filled with the sounds of screeches and snapping jaws. The juvenile watched in terror, its small body trembling as the fight unfolded. The raptors fought with precision, their movements a deadly dance. The Deinonychus was relentless, but it was outnumbered and outmatched. After a tense struggle, the predator let out a frustrated hiss and retreated into the jungle, its feathers ruffled and its pride wounded. The raptors regrouped, their bodies heaving as they caught their breath. One of them chirped softly to the juvenile, reassuring it that the danger had passed. The baby let out a weak chirp in response, its fear gradually subsiding. It had witnessed firsthand the lengths to which the raptors would go to protect it, and its trust in them deepened. When the rest of the pack returned, the lead raptor immediately assessed the situation. The guards chirped a detailed report, their sharp cries recounting the encounter with the Deinonychus. The lead raptor nodded, her eyes narrowing as she processed the information. She knew that the jungle was full of predators, and the baby's presence made them a target. But she also knew that abandoning the juvenile was no longer an option. The pack settled in for the night, their bodies forming a protective circle around the baby. The juvenile nestled close to the lead raptor, its small frame pressed against her warm feathers. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged through shared experiences and mutual trust. As the stars lit up the night sky, the lead raptor let out a soft, rhythmic chirp, a lullaby of sorts. The juvenile responded with a contented chirp of its own before drifting off to sleep. The pack remained alert, their sharp eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. For now, they were safe, but the jungle was unpredictable, and the dawn would bring new challenges. The morning began with the sounds of chirping insects and the rustling of leaves as the jungle stirred awake. The baby Triceratops, nestled among the Velociraptors, opened its eyes to find the pack already active. The lead raptor was pacing near the thicket's edge, her piercing yellow eyes scanning the horizon. The baby chirped softly, its voice weak but determined, as it attempted to rise. The juvenile's wound, though still raw, had begun to heal under the careful care of the raptors. With effort, it managed to stand on 3 legs, its injured limb tucked awkwardly beneath its small frame. The lead raptor noticed the baby's effort and approached, chirping in a tone that almost sounded encouraging. She nudged the juvenile gently, urging it to move. The raptors had developed a routine, and the baby Triceratops was quickly becoming a part of it. Mornings were spent scouting and foraging, afternoons were used to rest and plan, and evenings were reserved for reinforcing their defenses. The pack had adjusted to the juvenile's slower pace, their unity and adaptability allowing them to function as a cohesive unit despite the challenges. As the pack prepared to move out for the day, the lead raptor let out a series of sharp cries, issuing commands to her subordinates. 2 raptors stayed behind to guard the thicket while the rest, including the juvenile, ventured into the jungle. The baby limped along, its small frill twitching as it took in the vibrant sights and sounds of the forest. The journey was slow but deliberate. The raptors moved in a formation designed to protect the juvenile, with the lead raptor at the front and 2 others flanking the baby on either side. Their sharp claws and keen senses were always ready, their movements a delicate balance of stealth and vigilance. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the pack encountered a clearing where a patch of low-hanging fruit trees grew. The raptors paused, their heads tilting as they assessed the area. The lead raptor chirped softly, signaling that it was safe to proceed. The pack dispersed, each member taking a position to keep watch while others began foraging. The juvenile, drawn by the sweet aroma of the fruit, limped toward the nearest tree. Its small horns scraped against the bark as it reached up to grab a branch laden with ripe berries. The raptors watched with mild amusement, their sharp eyes keeping a lookout for any signs of danger. The baby's clumsy attempts at foraging drew the attention of one of the younger raptors, who approached with curiosity. The raptor chirped softly, offering a piece of fruit it had plucked from a nearby branch. The juvenile hesitated for a moment before accepting the offering, its trust in the pack growing with each passing day. But their peaceful foraging was soon interrupted by a distant roar. The sound echoed through the jungle, sending a shiver down the spines of the raptors. The lead raptor froze, her body tense as she listened intently. The roar belonged to a predator, and it was getting closer. The pack immediately went into defensive mode. The lead raptor barked commands, and the pack formed a protective circle around the juvenile. Their sharp claws and teeth glinted in the sunlight as they prepared for whatever was coming. From the shadows emerged a Carnotaurus, its massive frame and distinct horns making it a formidable predator. The Carnotaurus roared again, its small but powerful arms flexing as it advanced. It had caught the scent of the juvenile's wound and was drawn to the promise of an easy meal. The raptors held their ground, their shrill cries a warning to the intruder. The Carnotaurus snarled, its beady eyes locking onto the baby Triceratops. But before it could charge, the lead raptor darted forward, her movements a blur of speed and precision. The Carnotaurus lunged, but the lead raptor was faster. She dodged its massive jaws and raked her claws across its flank, drawing blood. The predator roared in pain, its head whipping around as it tried to catch the agile raptor. The rest of the pack joined the fray, their coordinated attacks forcing the Carnotaurus to focus on multiple targets. The juvenile watched in awe and terror as the battle unfolded. It chirped frantically, its instincts screaming for it to run, but its injured leg kept it rooted in place. The pack fought with ferocity, their unity and intelligence making up for their smaller size. After a tense and brutal struggle, the Carnotaurus let out a final, frustrated roar and retreated into the jungle. The raptors regrouped, their bodies heaving with exhaustion but their spirits unbroken. The lead raptor approached the juvenile, her feathers ruffled but her eyes calm. She chirped softly, reassuring the baby that the danger had passed. The pack returned to the thicket later that afternoon, their movements slower and more cautious after the encounter with the Carnotaurus. The juvenile, though shaken, had gained a deeper understanding of the raptor's bond. They weren't just protecting it out of necessity, they were protecting it out of loyalty. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the pack settled in for the evening. The lead raptor assigned guards to keep watch while the others rested. The juvenile nestled close to the lead raptor, its small frame trembling slightly as it processed the events of the day. The lead raptor chirped softly, her tone soothing. The juvenile responded with a quiet chirp of its own, its trust in her growing stronger. Despite the dangers they faced, the pack had become a sanctuary for the baby Triceratops, a place where it could heal and grow. The next morning brought a new challenge. The pack awoke to the sound of distant rustling, a noise that didn't belong to the usual rhythm of the jungle. The lead raptor signaled for silence, her body tense as she listened. The rustling grew louder, accompanied by low, guttural growls. From the shadows emerged a pack of Dilophosaurus, their vibrant frills flaring as they advanced. The Velociraptors recognized the threat immediately. The Dilophosaurus were smaller than the Carnotaurus but no less dangerous, their venomous spit capable of blinding and incapacitating their prey. The two packs stared each other down, their sharp cries and growls filling the air. The juvenile, sensing the tension, huddled close to the lead raptor. The Velociraptors formed a protective circle around the baby, their claws flexing as they prepared for battle. The lead raptor let out a fierce cry, signaling her pack to stand their ground. The Dilophosaurus pack hissed in response, their frills vibrating as they prepared to attack. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as the two sides squared off, each waiting for the other to make the first move. The battle was inevitable, and when it began, it was a blur of movement and sound. The Velociraptors fought with precision, their coordinated attacks targeting the weaker members of the Dilophosaurus pack. The juvenile watched in awe as the lead raptor darted between enemies, her claws and teeth a blur of motion. The Dilophosaurus pack fought back with equal ferocity, their venomous spit forcing the Velociraptors to stay on the move. The jungle floor became a chaotic battlefield, the air thick with the sounds of screeches and growls. After what felt like an eternity, the Dilophosaurus pack retreated, their frills folding as they disappeared into the jungle. The Velociraptors regrouped, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. The lead raptor approached the juvenile, her feathers ruffled but her eyes calm. She chirped softly, reassuring the baby that they had won. The bond between the raptors and the juvenile grew stronger with each passing day. The baby, once abandoned and helpless, had found a family among its unlikely protectors. The velociraptors, once feared as ruthless predators, had revealed a capacity for care and loyalty that defied the laws of nature. But the jungle was unpredictable, and the challenges they faced were far from over. The bond they had forged would be tested in ways they couldn't yet imagine. And as the sun set over the horizon, casting the jungle in hues of orange and gold, the pack prepared for whatever lay ahead. The jungle seemed eerily quiet the next day. The usual cacophony of bird calls and rustling leaves had been replaced by an unsettling stillness. The velociraptor pack, ever attuned to the rhythm of their surroundings, sensed the change immediately. The lead raptor raised her head, her yellow eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of disturbance. The juvenile Triceratops, still limping but noticeably stronger, chirped softly in confusion. It sensed the tension in the air but didn't fully understand its source. The lead raptor approached the baby, her movements deliberate and reassuring. She nudged the juvenile gently, urging it to stay close. The pack decided to remain near the thicket that day, their instincts telling them that venturing too far could be dangerous. The lead raptor assigned guards to patrol the perimeter while the rest of the pack foraged nearby. The juvenile watched as the raptors moved with a sense of purpose, their unity a testament to their survival skills. As the sun climbed higher into the sky, the source of the unease revealed itself. A distant roar echoed through the jungle, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. The ground vibrated faintly, a warning of something massive approaching. The pack froze, their sharp eyes and ears attuned to the direction of the sound. The juvenile chirped nervously, its small body trembling as the vibrations grew stronger. The lead raptor stepped in front of the baby, her body a protective shield. She let out a series of sharp cries, signaling her pack to prepare for action. The guards returned to the thicket, their claws flexing as they formed a defensive circle around the juvenile. From the shadows emerged not one but two Tyrannosaurus rexes, their massive forms casting long shadows over the jungle floor. The pack had encountered a single rex before, but two. This was a different challenge altogether. The lead raptor barked commands, her sharp cries rallying the pack. They had no intention of abandoning the juvenile, even in the face of such overwhelming odds. The first rex let out a deafening roar, its massive jaws snapping as it advanced toward the thicket. The raptors responded with shrill cries, their movements synchronized as they spread out to flank the predators. The second rex circled to the other side, its smaller but equally menacing frame cutting off any potential escape route. The juvenile chirped frantically, its injured leg preventing it from moving quickly. It looked to the lead raptor, its eyes wide with fear. The lead raptor chirped softly in response, her tone firm and reassuring. She nudged the baby toward a dense patch of underbrush, signaling for it to hide. The pack launched their attack with precision, their coordinated movements designed to confuse and distract the larger predators. One raptor darted in close, raking its claws against the leg of the first rex before retreating to safety. Another leaped onto the back of the second rex, biting and clawing before jumping off to avoid its thrashing tail. The rexes roared in frustration, their massive bodies too slow to keep up with the raptor's agility. But the raptors knew they couldn't sustain this fight for long. Their goal wasn't to defeat the rexes, it was to protect the juvenile and drive the predators away. The juvenile watched from its hiding spot, its small body trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. It had never seen such a display of bravery and unity. The raptors, despite their smaller size, were holding their own against the towering predators. As the battle raged on, the lead raptor noticed an opportunity. The first rex, distracted by the relentless attacks of the pack, had moved closer to the thicket, its massive foot just inches away from the juvenile's hiding spot. The lead raptor let out a sharp cry, signaling two of her pack members to create a diversion. The two raptors darted toward the rex, their movements swift and precise. They leaped onto its legs, their claws digging into its thick hide. The rex roared in anger, its head whipping around as it tried to shake them off. The distraction worked. giving the lead raptor a chance to guide the juvenile to a safer location. The baby limped as quickly as it could, its injured leg slowing its progress. The lead raptor stayed by its side, nudging it forward and chirping encouragement. They moved toward a dense cluster of trees, their thick trunks providing a natural barrier against the rexes. But the second rex had noticed their escape. It let out a guttural snarl and began to advance, its beady eyes locking onto the juvenile. The lead raptor chirped sharply, signaling for the rest of the pack to regroup. The raptors launched another wave of attacks, their sharp claws and teeth targeting the rex's vulnerable areas. The juvenile reached the safety of the trees, its small body collapsing onto the ground in exhaustion. The lead raptor stood guard, her body tense and her eyes scanning for any sign of danger. The pack continued to fight, their unity and determination a testament to their loyalty. The battle reached its climax as the first rex let out a final, frustrated roar and began to retreat. Its body was covered in scratches and bite marks, and its massive frame moved with noticeable fatigue. The second rex, seeing its companion retreat, hesitated for a moment before following suit. The pack watched as the predators disappeared into the jungle, their roars fading into the distance. The raptors regrouped near the thicket, their bodies heaving with exhaustion but their spirits unbroken. The lead raptor approached the juvenile, her feathers ruffled but her eyes calm. She chirped softly, reassuring the baby that the danger had passed. The juvenile responded with a weak chirp, its trust in the raptors stronger than ever. It nuzzled against the lead raptor, its small frame pressing against her warm feathers. The pack had faced incredible odds and emerged victorious, their bond with the juvenile growing deeper with each passing challenge. As the sun set over the jungle, casting the world in hues of orange and gold, the pack settled in for the night. The juvenile nestled close to the lead raptor, its small body finally at peace. The other raptors spread out, their sharp eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The jungle was unpredictable, and the challenges they faced were far from over. But the pack had proven time and again that they were stronger together. The bond they had forged with the juvenile was unbreakable, a testament to the power of unity and resilience. As the stars lit up the night sky, the lead raptor let out a soft, rhythmic chirp, a lullaby of sorts. The juvenile responded with a contented chirp of its own before drifting off to sleep. The pack remained alert, their bodies forming a protective circle around the baby. For now, they were safe. But in the unforgiving world of the Cretaceous, safety was always temporary. The first rays of dawn crept over the jungle canopy, casting long shadows on the forest floor. The Velociraptor pack stirred, their sharp eyes adjusting quickly to the morning light. The juvenile Triceratops, now stronger and more confident, was the first to rise. It stretched its legs carefully, testing the limits of its healing wound. Though the injury still ached, the baby had grown adept at moving on 3 legs, and its spirit seemed brighter with each passing day. The lead raptor observed from a distance, her yellow eyes narrowing in quiet satisfaction. Over the weeks, the juvenile had gone from a helpless burden to a resilient survivor. It chirped at her now, a sound that carried a mix of gratitude and playful defiance. The lead raptor chirped back, her tone softer than usual. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from the leader of the pack. But the tranquility of the morning didn't last long. A sudden rustling in the underbrush caught everyone's attention. The pack tensed, their bodies coiled like springs, ready to strike. The juvenile froze, its young mind torn between fear and curiosity. The rustling grew louder, and then, from the shadows, emerged a figure the raptors hadn't seen in weeks. The matriarch of the Triceratops herd. The massive creature stood at the edge of the thicket, her imposing horns casting shadows over the ground. Her eyes locked onto the juvenile, and she let out a low, mournful call. The baby chirped in response, its voice hesitant but unmistakably hopeful. It limped toward the matriarch, its movements slow and deliberate. The raptors watched in silence, their sharp eyes darting between the juvenile and the matriarch. The lead raptor let out a soft chirp, signaling the pack to stand down. She moved closer to the juvenile, her presence a silent reassurance. The baby glanced back at her, its eyes full of uncertainty. The matriarch stepped forward, her massive frame moving with surprising grace. She lowered her head, her nostrils flaring as she sniffed the juvenile. The baby chirped again, this time more confidently. It nuzzled against the matriarch's leg, its small frame dwarfed by her immense size. For a moment, it seemed as though the reunion would be a happy one. But the jungle is a place of unpredictable alliances and unseen dangers. From the shadows emerged another figure, a young male Triceratops, his horns shorter but his stance aggressive. He let out a warning call, his body language clear. The juvenile no longer belonged to the herd. The matriarch hesitated, her eyes flickering between the juvenile and the young male. She let out a low, mournful call, her head bowing slightly. It was an apology, a recognition that the laws of the herd couldn't be broken, even for her own offspring. The juvenile chirped in confusion, its small frame trembling as it stepped back. The raptors, sensing the tension, moved closer. The lead raptor positioned herself between the juvenile and the herd, her sharp claws flexing as she let out a low growl. The message was clear. The baby was under her protection now. The young male Triceratops snorted, his hooves pawing at the ground. He charged forward, his horns aimed directly at the lead raptor. The juvenile chirped in panic, its small body frozen in place. But the lead raptor was ready. She sidestepped the charge with precision, her claws raking across the male's flank as she moved. The pack erupted into action, their sharp cries filling the air as they flanked the male. The matriarch let out a warning call, her massive frame stepping between the young male and the raptors. She bellowed at the pack, her horns lowered in a defensive stance. The lead raptor barked orders to her pack, signaling them to hold their ground. The confrontation wasn't about dominance or territory, it was about the future of the juvenile. The matriarch seemed to understand this. She raised her head, her eyes locking onto the lead raptors. For a brief moment, predator and prey stood in silent understanding. The matriarch let out one final, mournful call before turning and leading the young male back into the jungle. The juvenile watched them go, its small body trembling with a mix of sadness and relief. It chirped softly, a sound that carried the weight of abandonment, but also the promise of a new beginning. The lead raptor approached the baby, her sharp eyes scanning its face. She let out a soft chirp, nudging the juvenile gently. The baby responded with a quiet chirp of its own, its trust in the raptors unwavering. It had found a new family, one that had fought for it, protected it, and taught it how to survive. As the days turned into weeks, the juvenile continued to grow stronger. Its wound had healed into a scar, a testament to its resilience. It still limped, but its movements were more confident, its small frame carrying a newfound sense of purpose. The raptors had fully embraced the baby as one of their own, and the juvenile had adapted to the pack's way of life. The lead raptor, once a cautious and calculating leader, had become fiercely protective of the juvenile. She watched over it with a maternal vigilance, her sharp eyes always scanning for potential threats. The rest of the pack followed her lead, their bond with the baby strengthening with each passing day. The juvenile, in turn, had begun to emulate the raptors. It moved with a cautious grace, its small horns lowered in a defensive stance. It had learned to read the jungle's rhythms, to recognize the signs of danger and the opportunities for safety. It was no longer the helpless baby that had been abandoned by its herd. It was a survivor. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the pack gathered at the edge of the thicket. The juvenile stood at the center, its small frame illuminated by the golden light. The lead raptor let out a series of sharp cries, rallying her pack. They had faced countless challenges, but they had overcome them together. The jungle, with all its dangers and unpredictability, was still their home. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the pack moved as one, their unity a testament to the power of loyalty and resilience. The juvenile, now a true member of the pack, limped alongside them, its small frame carrying the promise of a brighter future. The bond between the raptors and the juvenile was an extraordinary one, forged in the crucible of survival. It defied the laws of nature and challenged the boundaries of instinct. And in the unforgiving world of the Cretaceous, it was a reminder that even the fiercest creatures could show compassion, and even the most vulnerable could find strength. As the pack disappeared into the shadows of the jungle, their cries echoed through the night, a symphony of survival, unity, and hope. And the juvenile Triceratops, once abandoned and alone, was now a part of something greater, a family bound not by blood, but by the unbreakable ties of trust and loyalty.